The fluorescent lights of the Caldwell Industries parking garage hummed like something dying. Marcus Webb sat in his battered Chevy pickup, engine off, staring at nothing. It was 10:14 p.m. on a Thursday. His kids were asleep at his sister Diane's place. He should have left an hour ago, but he hadn't moved. Because 3 minutes ago, walking past the executive stairwell, he'd heard her voice through a cracked door. Soft, broken. Nothing like the woman whose photo ran in the Houston Business Journal last spring. No welder ever stays. She'd said it like a fact, like gravity, like something she'd stopped fighting. Marcus pressed his back against the cold concrete wall, heart doing something complicated in his chest. He was a welder, a single dad, a man who fixed broken things for a living. And he had no business caring about what he'd just heard. If you want to know what happens when a man who fixes things meets a woman who's given up on being fixed, stay until the end. Like this video and drop your city below. Let's see how far this story travels. Marcus Webb was the kind of man buildings forgot about. He'd been working maintenance and structural welding at Caldwell Industries' Houston headquarters for 11 months. 11 months of patching steel frames, resealing load-bearing joints, crawling through spaces that smelled like rust and old ambition, the kind of work that made you invisible. Executives walked past him like he was part of the infrastructure, which technically he was. That was fine. Marcus had learned to prefer invisible. 3 years ago, his wife Serena sat him down at their kitchen table and said the thing he couldn't unhear. "You're here, Marcus. You're always physically here. But I've been alone in this marriage for 2 years." She wasn't cruel about it. That almost made it worse. She'd moved to Denver 6 months later, took half the furniture, left him with Lily, age 6 at the time, and Jake, barely 4, and a silence in the house so thick he could feel it pressing against the walls. So Marcus rebuilt. Quietly, the way he rebuilt everything, methodically, without fanfare, checking each weld twice before moving on. He showed up for Lily's school plays even when the overtime was good. He learned to braid hair badly and then less badly. He made pancakes on Saturday mornings that Jake called the only good ones in the world, which Marcus knew wasn't true, but chose to believe anyway. He wasn't rich. His truck needed new tires he kept postponing. Lily's school needed a field trip deposit he'd moved 3 times on the calendar. But his kids were fed and loved and knew, bone deep knew, that their father was not going anywhere. Tonight he'd stayed late to re-inspect a weld on the 7th floor curtain wall. Storm season was coming, and the structural report had flagged a hairline concern. Nobody asked him to double check. He just did. That was how he ended up on the executive floor at 10 p.m. That was how he heard her. Claire Caldwell, 31 years old, CEO of Caldwell Group, the real estate and development empire her father had started and she had tripled in 8 years. Marcus had seen her exactly 5 times in 11 months. Once in the elevator, where she'd glanced at his badge and said good evening, like a reflex. Once at an all-hands meeting where she spoke for 12 minutes without notes and made 300 people feel simultaneously motivated and terrified. She was not supposed to sound like that. Small, tired, like someone who had quietly stopped expecting things to get better. No welder ever stays. Marcus walked to his truck, sat down, gripped the steering wheel. Not your problem, he told himself. He didn't start the engine. The notice had been sitting in Marcus's locker since 7 a.m. He almost missed it. Jake had woken up with a fever the night before, nothing serious, just enough to mean no sleep and a 5 a.m. pharmacy run, and Marcus had arrived at work 20 minutes late, still moving on coffee and adrenaline. He'd grabbed his gear without looking twice at the white envelope taped to the inside door. He found it on his lunch break. Dear Mr. Webb, due to structural reorganization of Caldwell Industries Maintenance Division, your position will be eliminated effective 30 days from receipt of this notice. Your contributions to the company are appreciated. Marcus read it twice. Then a third time. He sat on an overturned paint bucket in the utility corridor, the paper in his hands, and did the math he didn't want to do. 30 days. Lily's school deposit was overdue. Jake needed new shoes. The left one had a hole he'd been covering with a sock. The truck tires. The tires he'd been postponing for 4 months. A manic. That wasn't who he was anymore. He folded the letter carefully along its original crease and slid it back into the envelope. Then he went back to work. Because the 7th floor weld still needed a final inspection. Because the building didn't care that his life had just shifted sideways. He found out the name at 3 p.m. Danny, the floor supervisor, said it without thinking, the way people deliver bad news when they've already processed it themselves. Corporate came down hard this quarter. Miss Caldwell signed the restructuring order personally Monday morning. 12 positions across maintenance. Nothing personal, Webb. Just numbers. Just numbers. Marcus nodded slowly. Claire Caldwell. That's the one. He thanked Danny. Clocked out at 5. Picked up Jake from Diane's. Felt his son's forehead fever breaking. Warm, but not hot, and held him a few seconds longer than usual. Lily looked up from her homework and said, "Dad, you look weird." He told her he was fine. She didn't believe him. She never did. That night, washing dishes alone after the kids were in bed, Marcus let himself remember Friday, 5 days ago. Highway 59, just past the Greenway Plaza exit. He'd been driving home from a hardware run when he spotted a black Tesla pulled over on the shoulder, hazards blinking in the rain. A woman in a gray blazer standing beside it, phone pressed to her ear, looking at the flat tire, the way people look at problems they have money to solve but no idea how to solve themselves. He'd pulled over without thinking. Changed the tire in the rain while she stayed on her call, a work call. He gathered something about permits and city council. When he finished, she looked at him like she was genuinely seeing him for the first time. "You didn't have to do that," she'd said. "Tire needed changing," he'd said. She'd almost smiled. "Can I at least get your name?" "Marcus." "Thank you, Marcus." He hadn't asked for hers. Standing at his kitchen sink, dish soap on his hands, the termination letter on the counter, Marcus looked out at the Houston night and felt something settle cold and clear in his chest. The woman whose tire he changed in the rain on Friday, the woman who signed his pink slip on Monday, same woman. He shouldn't have gone back. 30-day notice meant 30 more days on the job. Marcus wasn't the kind of man who quit early or did sloppy work on his way out the door. So Monday morning, he showed up, badged in, and started his rounds like nothing had changed. Because for the building, nothing had. He was resealing a pressure joint on the 9th floor when he heard her. Not crying this time, arguing. Her office door half open, voice low, and controlled the way people get when they're furious and too disciplined to show it fully. "I understand the optics, Richard. I'm telling you the South Tower permit won't clear if we rush the structural sign-off. We do this right or we don't do it." Pause. "Then let them walk." She hung up. Silence. Marcus kept working. 30 seconds later, her voice came again, different this time. Quiet, like she'd forgotten the door was open. "I'm tired, Ryan. I know I always say that." Another pause. Longer. No man ever stays once they understand what this life actually looks like. I stopped being surprised by that. I stopped. Marcus's wrench went still in his hand. He knew that voice. Not her CEO voice. The other one. The one from the parking lot Thursday night. The one that had been living in the back of his head all weekend. Under the fever checks and the dish soap and the termination letter on the counter. He should have kept moving. Instead, he was still standing there when her office door swung fully open and Claire Caldwell walked out and nearly collided with him. She stopped. He stopped. Recognition moved across her face slowly, like something she was trying to verify before she trusted it. Her eyes dropped to his badge. Marcus Webb. Maintenance. Then back up to his face. "The tire," she said. "Yeah." A beat of silence that had too much inside it. "How long have you been standing there?" "Long enough," he said. He didn't say it unkindly, just honestly. The way he did most things. Something shifted behind her eyes. The professional neutrality snapped back fast. He'd seen it before. That skill some people had of slamming a door shut in under a second, but he'd seen what was behind it first. "I owe you an apology," she said. Her voice was even. "The restructuring. 12 positions. I reviewed the list after I found out you were on it." "After the tire." "Yes." Marcus looked at her for a long moment. "Did knowing change the list?" She held his gaze. "No." He nodded slowly. "That was honest, at least." He could work with honest. "Then you don't owe me an apology," he said. "You owe me a conversation." Claire Caldwell blinked. In 11 months, Marcus was fairly certain no one in this building had spoken to her quite like that. "I have 10 minutes," she said finally. "Coffee machines on the 3rd floor," he said. "I know where they keep the good cups." She almost smiled. Almost. "Lead the way." The 3rd floor break room was empty at 10 a.m. Marcus poured 2 coffees without asking how she took hers. Set one in front of her, black. If she wanted something else, she could say so. She didn't. They sat across from each other at a table with a scratch running diagonally across its surface. He'd patched it with epoxy 6 months ago, a repair so clean most people never noticed. Claire noticed. "You fixed this," she said. "Needed fixing." She wrapped both hands around her mug. Outside, Houston traffic moved 17 stories below. In here, it was just the hum of the refrigerator and 2 people with too much unsaid between them. "How long have you been doing this?" she asked. "Welding, maintenance." 12 years. Started on oil rigs outside Beaumont. Moved to structural work when my daughter was born. Less travel. "You have kids?" 2. Lily's 9. Jake just turned 6. Something moved across her face. Not pity. Something more careful than that. "Their mother?" "Denver." He said it the way you say a city when it's also a wound you've learned to stop pressing. "She left 2 years ago. Told me I was present but not there. She wasn't wrong." Claire looked at him. "And now?" "Now I'm there." He turned his coffee mug in his hands, took losing everything to figure out how, but I'm there. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind that meant something was being considered seriously. "I have a brother," Claire said finally. "Ryan. He's 25. Car accident when he was 16. Our parents didn't make it. He's been in a wheelchair since." She said it the way people deliver facts they've carried so long the weight has become normal. "I dropped out of Columbia, came home, built the company while managing his care schedule. 9 years. Every man I've been with eventually realizes what they're agreeing to," she continued. "They don't leave dramatically. They just drift. Start returning calls slower. Start looking at me like I'm asking too much by existing the way I exist." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "How many?" 4 serious ones. "And you decided that meant none of them would." It wasn't a question. She looked at him sharply. "Wouldn't you?" "Probably," he said. "Doesn't make it true." Claire set her mug down. "You're still being laid off, Marcus. I want to be clear about that. This conversation doesn't change the restructuring." "I know." "Then why are you still sitting here?" Marcus leaned back in his chair and looked at her the way he looked at structural problems, not with frustration, but with genuine curiosity about where the fault actually was. "Because you said something Thursday night that I haven't been able to stop thinking about. And I think you said it because you forgot someone could hear you. And I think the reason it's still in my head is because I've felt exactly that way." He paused. "And I don't think either of us should walk away from that without at least being honest about it." The refrigerator hummed. A door closed somewhere down the hall. "I'd like you to meet Ryan," Claire said quietly, "before you make up your mind about any of this." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "That's usually a 3rd or 4th date conversation." "I don't do things in order," she said. "And Ryan is not a 3rd date conversation. Ryan is the whole conversation." Marcus nodded slowly. "When?" "Sunday," she said. "Noon. I'll text you the address." "You don't have my number." She almost smiled. "You're in the company directory, Marcus." He stood, picked up both empty mugs and set them by the sink without being asked. Claire watched him do it. "You know," she said, "most people who get laid off don't wash their boss's coffee cup." "Most people," he said, "aren't trying to make a point." He walked out, and for the first time in a long time, Claire Caldwell sat alone in a room and didn't feel entirely alone in it. Sunday came gray and warm the way Houston Sundays do in October. Marcus drove to the address. Claire had texted a modest 2-story house in Bel Air. Quiet street, a ramp running alongside the front steps. Not what he'd expected for a billionaire's home. He sat in the truck for a minute, doing what he always did before something that mattered. Breathing. Checking the weld, so to speak. He knocked. Claire answered in jeans and a white t-shirt, hair down, no armor. She looked younger. Less like a CEO and more like a person. "He already knows about you," she said by way of greeting. "I tried to be vague. He has a gift for specifics." Ryan Caldwell was parked by the window in his wheelchair, a half-finished chessboard on the table beside him, and the particular stillness of someone who has learned to read rooms faster than most people read words. He looked at Marcus the way customs officers look at passports. Thorough, practiced, nothing personal. "You're the welder," Ryan said. "That's me. She fired you." "Company did. She signed it." Ryan glanced at Claire with something close to approval. "I like him already." What followed was not a comfortable conversation. Ryan asked Marcus directly the way only people who have watched their sister get hurt 4 times in 9 years can ask whether he understood what he was walking into. The care schedule. The medical appointments. The way a single emergency could erase a weekend, a vacation, a carefully made plan. Marcus didn't flinch. "I have a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old alone," he said. "I know what it means when a plan disappears." "That's not the same." "No," Marcus agreed. "It's not. But it taught me the same thing." Ryan studied him for a long moment. What thing? That showing up isn't a sacrifice. It's just what you do for people who matter. The room went quiet. That evening, after Ryan had retired and the dishes were done, Marcus had done them without asking, same as the coffee cup. Claire found him on the back porch looking out at the yard. "The board is pushing back," she said. "On us. Someone saw us leaving the building together last week. Richard, my CFO, pulled me aside Friday, said I was creating liability. Said a CEO dating a terminated employee was a headline waiting to happen." Marcus turned. "What did you tell him?" "That it was none of his business." She paused. "And then I spent the entire weekend wondering if I was being reckless." "Are you?" "Probably." She looked at him. "You're 34. You weld for a living. You have 2 kids and a truck that sounds like it's filing a formal complaint every time you start it. The math doesn't work, Marcus." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "You know what I've learned about math?" he said finally. "It tells you what things cost. It doesn't tell you what they're worth." Claire stared at him. "I'm still on the payroll for 19 more days," he said. "After that, I'm just a man. And that man would very much like to keep showing up if you'll let him." Claire looked away, jaw tight, walls up. He could see them, practically visible in the set of her shoulders. But there were cracks. Small ones. Exactly the kind he knew how to work with. His last day on the Caldwell payroll was a Tuesday. Marcus clocked out at 5 p.m., turned in his badge to the front desk, and drove straight to Diane's to pick up the kids. Lily asked if he was sad. He told her he was fine. She said, "Dad, your face does this thing when you're lying." Jake, who had been listening from the back seat, added helpfully that the thing was like when you burn the pancakes but pretend you didn't. Marcus laughed, despite himself. The best antidepressant he knew was his own children. He found a new position 2 weeks later, lead structural welder at a mid-sized contractor 3 miles from the house. Less prestige, slightly better pay, hours that let him pick up Jake from school on Tuesdays and Thursdays. It wasn't Caldwell Industries. He didn't miss Caldwell Industries. He missed the 9th floor. He missed the sound of a half-open door. Claire texted the night he started the new job. "Diane told me. Congratulations." He stared at the message. "You know my sister?" "She called me," Claire replied. 3 weeks ago. Said if I hurt you, she'd find a way to restructure me." Marcus sat on his couch and read that twice. Then he called Diane and had a short, pointed conversation about boundaries that she completely ignored. They found a rhythm slowly. The way things that are actually built to last come together, not all at once, but piece by piece, each part checked before the next one goes in. Dinners at the Bel Air house on Sundays. Lily teaching Ryan card tricks he pretended to be bad at. Jake falling asleep on Claire's couch with the particular confidence of a child who has decided somewhere is safe. Claire came to Lily's school recital on a Wednesday night and sat in a plastic folding chair for 90 minutes watching 3rd graders perform an enthusiastic and only partially accurate rendition of American history. She didn't check her phone once. Lily noticed. She told Marcus afterward, in the car, in the matter-of-fact tone she reserved for important observations. She stayed for the whole thing, even the boring part. "Yeah," Marcus said. "Travis's mom left during my part last year," Lily said. "Claire didn't." Marcus kept his eyes on the road. "No," he said quietly, "she didn't." The hard moments came too, because they always do. Claire canceled 2 dinners back to back during a development crisis that put her on calls until midnight 3 nights running. Jake cried the second time, not dramatically, just that quiet kind of sad that's worse than dramatic. Marcus held him and explained that some people's work was like a fire you couldn't always choose when it needed putting out. "Is she coming back?" Jake asked. "Yeah, buddy," Marcus said. "She's coming back." He believed it when he said it. That was new. Believing things about people again. The following Sunday, Claire showed up at their door, not the Billionaire house, their house. The rental in Pearland with the patched gutters and the yard Jake had claimed for a football field, with groceries and an apology and the slightly uncertain look of someone who was used to being in charge and was learning, slowly, that love didn't have a corporate structure. She cooked badly. Marcus didn't say so. Lily did. Claire laughed so hard she had to put down the spatula. That was the moment Marcus knew. Not from anything grand. Just from the sound of it, unguarded, real, filling up his kitchen like it belonged there. A year later, Marcus Webb stood in the backyard of a house in Bel Air. Not as a guest, as someone who lived there. The move had happened gradually, a drawer here, a toolbox there, Lily's purple comforter appearing on the bed in the corner room, Jake's football taking up permanent residence in the yard, until one morning Marcus woke up and realized the word home had quietly changed addresses without making an announcement. It was a Sunday. It was always a Sunday. Ryan was on the back porch, losing a rematch to Lily at cards, loudly disputing a rule she had almost certainly invented 30 seconds ago. Jake was attempting to teach Claire how to throw a spiral with the patient condescension of a 6-year-old who has accepted that some adults are simply beyond saving. Claire was laughing, getting it wrong on purpose, Marcus suspected, because Jake's coaching face was worth it. Diane was inside doing something to the kitchen that she'd insisted wasn't reorganizing, but absolutely was. Marcus stood at the edge of all of it and felt something he hadn't felt in 3 years. Not relief, not just happiness, wholeness. The specific, quiet weight of a life that had been broken and put back together better than it was before. Claire found him there a few minutes later. She leaned against the porch railing beside him, shoulder touching his, both of them watching Jake explain to her, very seriously, that her elbow was the whole problem. "I have something to tell you," she said. "Good something or bad something. The Soul Development Group wants me to lead a project. 4 months on site." Marcus looked at her. "You should go." "Marcus, Claire," he turned to face her. "Build the thing. That's who you are. We'll be here." She looked at him for a long moment. Eyes bright. Walls completely gone. He'd watched them come down slowly over 12 months, one honest conversation at a time, and what was underneath was extraordinary. "No man ever stays," she said quietly. Not like a fact anymore, like something she was finally, carefully setting down. "No," Marcus said, "but the right one shows up. Every time, even when it's hard, especially then." He meant it. She knew he meant it. That was the difference. Ryan called from the porch. "Are you two being romantic? Because Lily is cheating and I need a witness." "She learned it from you," Lily shouted. Claire laughed, that real, unguarded sound that still hit Marcus somewhere structural every single time, and took his hand. "Come on," she said. "Your daughter needs to be stopped." "Our daughter," Marcus said quietly. Claire stopped walking, turned, looked at him with something that had no word precise enough for it. "Yeah," she said softly. "Ours." They walked back into the noise and the mess and the beautiful, complicated fullness of the life they had built, not despite the broken parts, but because of what those broken parts had taught them, both about what staying really means.